Hey guys, it's Mike. In this video I will give you an insight of how I sampled the sequences of my Eurorack modular system and transferred them into the Korg Kronos workstation. And I've put a link in the description so you can download the sounds and play them directly. So if you like my channel, hit subscribe and hit the notification button, and that helps me to make much more of these wonderful videos. So you got to see how I set up my modular system. I will show you how I recorded the sequences and which equipment I used. You will see which modules I took to get this sound. You will get some insights about editing and exporting the sequences in Logic X Pro. I will give you a closer look on how I prepared the samples in Sample Robot, which is a program that edits and exports the samples into multi-samples for a lot of different workstations like the Korg Kronos. You will see how I created the wave sequences inside the Kronos, and you will hear, of course, a lot of sounds of the modular toolkit library and the performance functions. So the first thing I did was putting a system together that would allow me to have a big variety of analog and digital sounds.
Bottom left you see the triple oscillator from the German brand MFB. It has plenty modulation inputs and a built-in noise generator. The sound is quite special because the tracking is a bit loose, which makes it very unique sounding. At the top left there are two double helix oscillators from Pittsburgh Modular. The sound is huge and you have very flexible waveforms. There is also an LFO inside, and it even has a function to shape the envelope. The next module is the toolbox sequencer from 1010 Music. It is a great tool for long melodies, and the four built-in LFOs are a killer. At the right side you can see two EMS filters from Analog Systems. The sound is very British and edgy and can add a nice distortion. On top of it you see the two quintet VCAs from ADDAC. Below there are two Moog filters from EMW. Above there are two RS95N oscillators from Analog Systems. Also very direct and British sounding. Further down, the two envelope generators from Tip Top Audio. At the top right you see Elements, a digital oscillator. At the bottom right there is the Winter Modular Eloquenza, which is the master brain in this system.
I connected the two double helix oscillators with these two mixes, the VCAs from ADDSC, a Spanish brand. They are patched directly into the two Moog filters here and then routed to my main mixer. These two filters are modulated by these two envelopes here at the side. And the trigger comes from the gate output of the Eloquenza. I will play around a bit with the envelope to shape the contour of the sound. And now I have to transpose it to the next note. As we are in C major, my next note will be D, so I have to go up a whole step right now. And my next note will be E. For the next sequence, I connected one LFO of my Toolbox sequencer to the modulation inputs of the Moog filters, which means the triangle wave will now modulate the cutoff frequency of the filters. To get more into the digital universe, I will change my oscillator now to another module called Elements from Mutable Instruments. I have the Elements now connected to track 2 of my Eloquencer, and I have patched 3 LFOs to the Elements modulation inputs to control parameters like damping, which you could compare to damping the strings of a guitar, for example. Then the timbre that you can compare to the pickup of a guitar, and the last LFO controls the flow. You can see it as kind of an airflow of a flute. So everything is on 0 now, so listen to that. Now I will add some modulation to the flow parameter. And now to the damping, which you can hear very good. And this is the timbre. Now I have to transpose it again. We are still in C, so it goes up one step. And now one half step higher because we are in C minor. Yeah, this is a recording setup for my modular system. The main part is this performance mixer. It has 6 mono channels and 2 stereo channels in the basic version. I also bought this channel expansion that adds another 2 stereo channels to the mixer. A really cool thing is this output expander that allows me to have 14 separate outputs, which is really terrific for mixing the tracks. These 2 aux sends are connected to my effect modules. One is going to the reverb that I have here in the case, and the other one goes to the stereo delay, which is a black module right here. So now that I've recorded all my sequences, I have to cut and edit them. I have to make fade-ins, fade-outs to avoid this clicks and cracks at the end and at the beginning. So this I will do in Logic X Pro. I've imported all the tracks that I've recorded into Logic Pro X. And now I need all these single samples for creating these wave sequences in my Korg Kronos later. Sounds like a lot of work, but I will show you how you can make your life a lot easier doing this. So the first thing I do is check if this is set to snap regions to relative position. Then I activate the flex function and double check if it's also activated on the track that I work on. And now you can already see the transients. So the next thing is we click on cut at transient markers and voila. All the single regions are there in front of us. I will delete this empty region because we don't need it. Then I select the first 16 regions because our wave sequence will be 16 steps long. I make a fade in at the beginning and a fade out at the end. Just choosing a very small value like 1, because I just want to get rid of the clicks. And then I'm ready to export the files. I just have to make sure to name it correctly, like sequence 1, C1, yeah, my node C1. Now we have the name of the sequence and the exact node, which is already great. But as we have 16 samples running in a sequence on one node, we have to have a very clear index, which is the first, the second, etc. Now look, I take this block that says interval and add it to the field above. And now you see that the program already adds the 1 to the file name. All I have to do now is pressing export. Okay, let's check our folder. And you see there are the 16 samples neatly arranged and indexed correctly. So I have all these single samples now, and now I have to create multi-samples, and that I will do with the program Sample Robot. We are now inside the program Sample Robot. With this handy tool you can fine-tune and edit your samples, assign them to the right keys of your synth, and then export the multi-samples that you have just created into the right format. So first we create a new project. We'll mention that project means here the sound that you are working on, which includes all the necessary multi-samples and all that belongs to that sound. Then I have to create a multi-sample and also name it sequence 1. This will be my first multi-sample out of 16 that we need for later on. Next I will enter the key range. My lowest key is number 36 because that is the C1 on my keyboard. And I will make the top key here a bit lower. Now I will copy the template of my first multi-sample that I've just created 15 times. So let me delete the first one. Yeah, now you see our 16 clearly numbered multi-samples. Okay, now I have to go into the folder where I have saved my samples. So now I want to copy the first samples onto my keyboard. To do that I just have to drag the file named C101 onto the key C1 of the keyboard above. It's a little bit confusing, I know, but believe me, this is the easiest way. Okay, I check it. Now I want to get rid of the click at the end. So I just move this a bit to the left. I select the next multi-sample and drag the next sample onto this key. Check again. Yeah, move the endpoint a bit. Sounds good. Next one. Number 3. Cool. And number 4. Yeah, and number 5. Sounds great. So, you see, I have to do this 16 times per key, as our wave sequence in the Kronos later will be 16 steps long, a real sequence. So when I'm finished with all my 16 multi-samples, I just have to export the sound as a Kronos KSC file. I just check the export settings. 16-bit 44.1 sounds pretty good to me. And then I save it into the right folder. Let's check it. So now we have all these different multi-samples in this folder and one KSC file. And with that KSC file you can later load the multi-sample into your Kronos. Now follow me to the Kronos to create the wave sequences. The first thing I do is I go to my USB stick directory that contains my samples. Then I load the KSC file into the memory for creating the new wave sequence. I choose clear all because I want the sample memory to be totally clean. I press global and I go to the wave sequence panel. Because almost each sequence are recorded with 16 steps, I will make the end step and the loop of the wave sequence 16 steps long. Okay, now I go again to the steps parameters. You see this button? Here you tell the Khronos which memory he is supposed to take the samples from. I have to select new sampling session here, and this step we have to repeat unfortunately 15 times for all my 16 steps. Maybe it's time for a coffee. Okay, I go back to step 1 now, and I have to take care of the order of the samples. I start of course with multisample number 1. Step 2 will be multisample number 2 and so on until number 16. Now I activate the tempo function. That means we can work with the real note values now instead of milliseconds or seconds. I have to put all these values now to 16th notes because the sequence I recorded was quantized in 16th. But I will speed this up for you guys. And now you hear all the 16 steps. Quite handy tools are these keysync and quantize trigger functions. That means every time you hit a note, the note is quantized to the beat. So if you're working with sequences like this, it's always in sync with the tempo. That's it. You can play around with it. You can transpose each step differently, play steps backwards, etc. The last step in this procedure is that I have to save my wave sequence. So let me get my USB keyboard and I will give it a name. Let's call it test wave sequence 01. I press OK and confirm, and I'm very sure and done. Now we want to convert this wave sequence into a regular program. So I press the program button, go to the user bank G and look for an empty slot. Look, now I go to the oscillator basics page, press on this button here, and then you can select whether the oscillator should be a multisample or a wave sequence. I choose wave sequence and I will look for our recently created wave sequence. There it is. I press OK and that's the whole thing. So now you can start adding effects, for example, like a stereo delay. And now we have to save it again. test 01 wave sample. So with each program and combination you have the possibility to add a bass drum and a sidechain effect that are put on two of these performance buttons. that's it so far from me. Have fun with the sounds. I hope you enjoy the video. And I hope you enjoy the sounds, of course. And play around with them, make your own wave sequences. And at the end of this video, there's a short description how to load the sounds. So take care, guys. See you next time. So before you start loading my sounds, guys, please back up your sounds and your samples, because you never know what happens. Okay, when you open the folder, you see 5 items. The best way is to select the user bank KSC file, then select append, and then confirm loading. The Khronos will then load a temporary file into the memory. When the user bank has been loaded, you just select the PCG file. This is a program bank and the combination bank and some other things. We want to leave these selections blank because we already have loaded the samples into memory. Okay, then we press OK, and the programs and all the other combinations and stuff like drums will be loaded. You will find the programs and combinations on the user bank G. You will find around 30 wave sequences and 30 regular multisamples in my sound set. Some are monophonic, some polyphonic, but you can change all of that, of course. And some are chromatically playable, some you can play diatonically. They are a bit dependent on a certain key, but you can of course detune it via this detune function into another key.